Picture this. It is a Friday evening in a bustling city center. A man, let's call him David, 34 years old, holding down a steady job, dressed well enough, is sitting at a bar with a half-empty glass in front of him. Across the room, he spots a woman. She is exactly his type. She is laughing with a friend, she looks radiant, and for a split second, that old primal instinct kicks in. His posture straightens. His brain begins to map out the approach. Wait for a lull in the conversation, walk over, smile, introduce himself, maybe offer to buy a round. It is the script he has seen in movies and heard from his uncles his entire life. It is the script of the chase. But then, something shifts. It happens in the blink of an eye, almost invisible to anyone watching. David sighs, checks his watch, and looks back down at his phone. He does not stand up. He does not walk over. He swipes his thumb across a screen, scrolling past faces he will likely never meet, and simply lets the moment die. He orders another drink for himself and stays exactly where he is. This is not just a scene from a bar. Shift the camera to a living room in the suburbs. A husband of 10 years watches his wife washing dishes. He thinks about walking up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, and suggesting they go out for a surprise dinner this weekend. But then he remembers the last 3 times he tried that. He remembers the critique about the restaurant choice, or the sigh about being too tired, or the comment that he should have helped with the laundry instead of planning a date. So, he stays on the couch. He turns up the volume on the TV. The impulse to pursue, to court, to chase, flickers and goes out. This is the phenomenon we are seeing all over the world right now, from the chaotic world of modern dating apps to the quiet living rooms of long-term marriages. Men are stopping the chase. And if you are a woman watching this, you might be feeling confused, frustrated, or even invisible. You might be asking your friends, why doesn't he try anymore? Or, where have all the assertive men gone? You might feel like you have to do all the heavy lifting, or that men have simply become lazy. But here is the brutal truth, the part that is uncomfortable to hear but necessary to understand if we want to fix this mess. Men are not stopping the chase because they have lost their desire for women. They are not stopping because they are broken or because they do not want love. Many men are stopping the chase because they have quietly, internally, run a cost-benefit analysis, and the results are devastating. They have decided that the price of admission to the modern relationship market, or the price of keeping the peace in a marriage, is simply too high for the return they are getting. They aren't retreating out of laziness. They are retreating out of self-preservation. They feel they are playing a game where the rules change constantly, and the only guaranteed prize for participating is exhaustion. And until we understand the silence behind that decision, the distance between the sexes is only going to get wider. We need to give a name to this dynamic because it is happening so frequently that it has almost become a new cultural standard. We can call it the safety retreat, or perhaps more accurately, the rejection fatigue loop. It is a psychological state where the desire for connection is overpowered by the fear of getting it wrong. For a long time, the cultural narrative has been that men are the hunters, the ones with the thick skin, the ones who are supposed to enjoy the thrill of the chase. But psychology tells us that human beings, regardless of gender, will eventually stop performing a behavior if the outcome is consistently painful or confusing. This is simple behavioral conditioning. If you touch a stove and it burns you, you stop touching the stove. If a man extends himself emotionally or socially and gets met with indifference, sharp criticism, or a reaction that makes him feel like a predator, he learns to keep his hands to himself. In the dating world, this loop looks like a minefield of mixed signals. A lot of men today feel like they are trying to navigate a complex social labyrinth without a map. They are told to be assertive but not aggressive, to be persistent but not creepy, to take the lead but not be controlling. The lines have become so blurred that for many decent, well-meaning men, the risk of being labeled toxic or intrusive simply for walking up to a stranger feels incredibly high. They aren't just afraid of hearing the word no. They can handle a no. They are afraid of the shame that comes with being perceived as a nuisance. So, instead of risking that humiliation, they choose the safety of silence. They retreat into passivity because passivity feels safe. It is a defense mechanism, pure and simple. In long-term relationships and marriages, the pattern is different, but the root cause is the same. The chase isn't about getting a date. It is about courtship, romance, and initiating intimacy. The loop usually starts subtly. A husband tries to plan something. Maybe he buys a gift or initiates sex, and the response he gets is lukewarm or critical. Maybe she says, "Why did you buy these flowers? You know we're trying to save money." Or, "Not now, I have a million things to do." He hears rejection. He hears, "Your effort is a burden, not a gift." After this happens 5, 10, or 50 times, a switch flips in his brain. He adopts a mindset of learned helplessness. He thinks, "If I do nothing, I might get yelled at for being lazy. But if I try and fail, I get yelled at for being incompetent. So I will choose the path that requires less energy." We have to be very clear here. This is not just about men having fragile egos. That is a lazy explanation. This is about a fundamental human need for competence. Men, in particular, are often socialized to value themselves based on their utility and their success rate. If a man feels like he cannot win, if he feels that no matter how he approaches the chase, he is destined to fail or be criticized, he will check out of the game entirely. However, recognizing this pain doesn't mean we ignore the fallout. This retreat has consequences. When men stop chasing, women don't just feel relieved of the pressure. They often feel unloved, undesirable, and burdened. A woman in a marriage where the husband has stopped chasing her doesn't feel safe. She feels like she is living with a roommate who has mentally checked out. She feels the weight of having to drive the emotional life of the relationship all by herself. This creates a vacuum of leadership and passion in the relationship, and resentment rushes in to fill that space. The man pulls back to protect himself from criticism, and the woman criticizes him because he has pulled back. It is a self-sustaining cycle of misery, and nobody wins. We also have to acknowledge that this isn't always happening in a vacuum. It is often fueled by childhood patterns. A man who grew up with a critical mother or a volatile household may have learned very early on that flying under the radar is the only way to survive. He learned that making his presence known, expressing his wants, his desires, his drive, only attracted trouble. So, as an adult, when his wife asks for more passion or his girlfriend asks for more initiative, his inner child panics. His nervous system screams, "Stay small. Stay quiet. If you try, you will only make a mess." So he freezes. He stops the chase not because he doesn't want the woman, but because he doesn't trust himself to handle the consequences of pursuing her. Let's step directly into the shoes of the average man today. If we could place a microphone inside the mind of the husband sitting silently in his car, or the boyfriend who seems to have lost his spark, what would we actually hear? It is rarely the sound of indifference. It is usually the sound of a chaotic, exhausting internal calculation. To understand why men stop chasing, you have to understand one fundamental pillar of male psychology: the deep, biological, and social need to feel competent. For a man, being useful, being capable, and getting things right isn't just a nice bonus. It is often the core of his self-worth. When a man chases, whether he is approaching a woman at a party or planning an anniversary weekend for his wife, he is putting his competence on the line. He is saying, "I have a plan, I have a desire, and I am taking a risk to make it happen." In the past, the chase was difficult, sure, but the rules were relatively clear. Today, for many men, the chase feels less like a romantic adventure and more like a performance review where the criteria for passing are hidden and constantly changing. In the world of dating, many men feel paralyzed by the fear of being perceived as a threat. We are living in a time of necessary correction regarding boundaries, which is a good thing. However, the side effect for the well-intentioned man is a paralyzing anxiety. He thinks, "If I approach her and she's not interested, am I just annoying her? Am I being creepy? Am I ruining her night?" He is terrified of being that guy, the one who doesn't take a hint, the one who invades space. The social penalty for making a woman uncomfortable today is huge. So, he runs a risk assessment. The reward, a potential date. The risk, being labeled a predator or a nuisance, or simply facing a harsh, public rejection. For many, the math just doesn't add up. It is safer to stay in the lane of friendship, or to hide behind a screen where the rejection is digital and stingless. But let's look closer at the men in long-term relationships, because this is where the silence is loudest. Why does a husband who used to drive 3 hours just to see you for 20 minutes now struggle to get off the couch to plan a date night? Deep down, many of these men feel like they have been demoted from lover to employee. Imagine a scenario. A husband decides to clean the kitchen to surprise his wife. He feels good about it. He is chasing her favor, trying to be a partner. She walks in, sees the clean counters, but immediately notices he put the non-stick pan in the dishwasher. She sighs, "I've told you 1,000 times, the pans don't go in there. Now I have to wash it by hand." In her mind, she is just correcting a mistake. But in his emotional world, the entire effort has just been voided. He didn't hear, "Please wash the pan differently." He heard, "You are incompetent. You can't even do a simple favor without messing it up. You are more work than help." When this happens repeatedly, with the way he drives, the way he dresses the kids, the restaurant he picked for dinner, he begins to feel that there is no way to win. If he takes the lead, he gets critiqued. If he tries to chase her by planning things, he risks getting it wrong and dealing with her disappointment. And for a man who loves his wife, seeing her disappointed in him is physically painful. It triggers a deep sense of shame. So, to avoid that shame, he stops trying to lead. He stops taking risks. He adopts the strategy of, "Tell me what to do, and I'll do it." He becomes passive. He waits for instructions because following instructions is safe. If he does exactly what she says, he can't get in trouble. But here is the tragedy. By becoming safe, he ceases to be attractive. The polarity dies. The chase ends because you cannot chase someone who is essentially your boss. There is another layer to this: the sheer exhaustion of modern life. We cannot ignore that men are often burdened by the expectation of being the stoic provider. Many men feel they are carrying the weight of the world: career stress, financial pressure, the need to be strong for everyone else. When they come home, or when they look at their relationship, they are often desperate for a sanctuary. They want a place where they don't have to perform, where they don't have to be on. Chasing requires energy. Romance requires creativity. If a man feels that his relationship is a place of high friction, where he has to constantly guess the right answer or navigate complex emotional tests, he will naturally conserve his energy. He isn't withholding love to be cruel. He is conserving energy to survive. He thinks, "I just fought dragons at work all day. I cannot come home and fight another dragon here. I need to sit down." He stops the chase because he is trying to protect the little bit of peace he has left. He tells himself that his wife or girlfriend is better off if he just stays out of the way. He convinces himself that his passivity is actually a form of kindness. He is keeping the peace. He doesn't realize that to her, his peace looks like abandonment. He doesn't say, "I am terrified of failing you." He just says, "I'm tired," or "Whatever you want to do is fine with me." He retreats into his cave, not because he doesn't love the woman outside, but because inside the cave, nobody is telling him he's doing it wrong. Now, I want to speak directly to the women watching this. If you are sitting there nodding your head, feeling that familiar ache in your chest because the man you love has become a ghost in his own relationship, this part is for you. I am going to act as your interpreter. I am going to take those frustrating, hurtful behaviors you see every day and translate them into the emotional language he is actually speaking, but doesn't know how to explain. When a man stops chasing, or when he retreats into that shell of passivity, most women hear a very specific message. You hear, "I don't care about you anymore." You hear, "You are not worth the effort." You hear, "I am lazy and I take you for granted." It is completely understandable why you hear that. If you stopped putting effort into something, it would likely be because you stopped caring. But for the vast majority of men, the internal code is different. Let's translate the phrase, "whatever you want." You ask him, "Where should we go for dinner?" Or, "What should we do this weekend?" And he replies, "I don't know, whatever you want is fine." What you hear, "I can't be bothered to think about this." You do the work. What he is actually saying, "I am terrified of picking the wrong thing. The last time I picked a place, it was too loud or the food was bad, and I felt your disappointment like a physical blow. I value your happiness more than my preference, so I am handing you the steering wheel to ensure you have a good time. I am not being lazy. I am yielding to avoid conflict. He thinks he is being a good guy by letting you choose. He doesn't realize that you don't want the power. You want the partner. Let's translate the silence. You're trying to talk about the relationship. Maybe you're getting emotional or raising your voice because you feel unheard, and he just shuts down. He stares at the floor. He gives one-word answers. What you hear, he is stonewalling me. He is cold. He doesn't feel anything. What he is actually saying, I am emotionally flooded. My system is redlining. I don't have the verbal tools to keep up with your processing speed right now, and I am terrified that if I open my mouth, I will say something I can't take back. I am not ignoring you to hurt you. I am freezing to protect the relationship from my own anger or inadequacy. Psychologically, many men experience emotional conflict as a physical threat. Their heart rate spikes, their adrenaline surges. The silence is a primitive defense mechanism. It is playing dead until the bear goes away. Let's translate the lack of romance. He hasn't complimented you in months. He hasn't tried to initiate a date. What you hear, he doesn't find me attractive. He's bored of me. What he is actually saying, I don't feel like I have any credit in the bank. I feel like I am constantly in a deficit with you, always apologizing, always fixing a mistake, always behind on chores. Romance feels like a luxury for a man who is winning, and right now, I feel like I'm losing. I don't feel like a lover. I feel like a disappointment. And it is very hard to be romantic when you feel like a disappointment. Men chase when they feel confident. Men court when they feel they have something of value to offer. If he feels that his offering, his presence, his choices, his efforts, is constantly found lacking, he will stop offering it. He isn't withholding love. He is withholding himself to avoid the pain of rejection. Let's translate the fixing versus listening. You come home venting about a problem at work. You just want to be held. He immediately starts giving you solutions. Well, why don't you just email your boss? Why don't you quit? You get annoyed because you just want empathy. He gets annoyed because you won't take his advice. What you hear, he is dismissive. He wants me to shut up. What he is actually saying, I hate seeing you in pain. It physically hurts me to see you stressed. I want to be useful to you. I want to be your hero. The only way I know how to protect you is to fix the problem. If I can't fix it, I feel useless. Please let me fix it so I can feel like I am taking care of you. This is the classic tragedy. He is offering his version of love, protection, and solutions, and you are experiencing it as a lack of love, dismissal. And finally, let's translate the retreat to the garage/video games/phone. He comes home and immediately zones out on a screen or disappears into a hobby. What you hear, he prefers that game to me. He is escaping his family. What he is actually saying, I have been on all day. I have been performing for my boss, for society, for the bills. I am empty. I need a transition zone. I need a place where the stakes are zero, where nobody needs anything from me, where I can just exist without being judged. I am not recharging away from you. I am recharging for you. If I don't take this hour, I will be irritable and snappy. This is my oxygen mask. Is this fair to you? Not always. Is it frustrating? Absolutely. But it is not malicious. The man who has stopped chasing is usually not a man who has stopped loving. He is a man who has run out of the specific type of fuel required to chase. Confidence, safety, and the belief that he can succeed. He is waiting for a signal that it is safe to come out. He is waiting to know that if he tries to run towards you, he won't trip over a wire and get criticized for the way he runs. He is waiting to be seen not as a project to be improved, but as a man who is doing his best, even if his best looks different from yours. We have talked about the pain, and we have translated the silence. But now, we have to put the nice talk aside for a moment and look at the harsh reality. Empathy is necessary for healing, but it does not change behavior. If we want to actually restart the engine of this relationship, we have to look under the hood at the things nobody wants to admit. We have to look at the uncomfortable truths that are keeping this standoff alive. Here is the first harsh truth. and this one is specifically for the men. You might tell yourself that by stepping back, by saying whatever you want, and by avoiding conflict, you are being a good guy. You tell yourself you are keeping the peace. But the brutal reality is that your passivity is not a gift, it is a burden. When you refuse to make decisions, when you refuse to plan, when you refuse to initiate, you are not being easygoing. You are forcing your partner to become the manager of your life. You are forcing her to carry the entire mental load of the relationship. By checking out, you are essentially looking at the woman you love and saying, I am not willing to risk being wrong, so I will make you responsible for everything. That is not an act of love, that is an act of cowardice. It is emotional laziness dressed up as compromise. You cannot expect a woman to feel desire for you if she feels like she has to drag you through life. Attraction requires polarity. It requires a counterforce. When you become a ghost in your own home, you force her to become the chaos, the noise, and the nag, simply to get a reaction out of you. You are complaining that she is controlling, but you have created a vacuum of leadership that she has no choice but to fill. If you vacate the driver's seat, you cannot get angry when she grabs the wheel. Now, for the women, here is your harsh truth. You say you want a man who takes the lead. You say you want him to plan dates, to make decisions, to chase you like he used to. But in many relationships, you have systematically punished him every time he tried to do exactly that. You cannot ask for a gladiator and then treat him like a toddler. You cannot ask him to be the man of the house and then correct him on how he slices the onions, how he dresses the kids, or which route he drives to the store. There is a mechanism called gatekeeping that happens in so many homes. It is when you want help, but you only want it done your way. If he tries to romance you and buys the wrong chocolate, and your reaction is a sigh of disappointment rather than appreciation for the gesture, you are training him to stop trying. You are teaching him that the cost of entry is perfection. The harsh truth is that many women are addicted to being right more than they are committed to being happy. You have to ask yourself, do I want a partner who does everything perfectly according to my spreadsheet, or do I want a partner who feels safe enough to take risks and love me wildly? You cannot have both. If you micromanage his efforts, you kill his instinct to chase. You turn a lover into an employee who is just trying not to get fired. And finally, the harsh truth for both of you. You are stuck in a standoff that is killing your love. It is the "I'll change when you change" trap. The man says, I'll start chasing her again when she stops criticizing me and starts appreciating me. The woman says, I'll stop criticizing him when he steps up and shows me he cares. You are both waiting for the other person to blink first. You are treating your relationship like a transaction in a marketplace. I won't pay until I see the goods. But love is not a marketplace. This scorekeeping is a poison. Every day you spend waiting for the other person to fix it is a day you are actively practicing divorce. You are practicing separation. You are digging a trench between you that will eventually become too wide to jump across. The reality is that this cycle doesn't break by accident. It breaks because one person decides to be the bigger person. One person decides to drop the weapon. One person decides to act as if the other person is already the partner they want them to be. Men, you have to risk leading even if you might fail. Women, you have to risk trusting even if he might stumble. If you keep protecting your own ego, you will successfully protect yourself from pain, but you will also protect yourself from any possibility of connection. The safety you are clinging to is actually a cage. So, how do we break this stalemate? How do we stop the silence from becoming permanent? We have to move from diagnosis to action. But we are not going to talk about grand gestures or expensive vacations, because frankly, if you are stuck in this loop, you probably don't have the emotional energy for that yet. We need micro shifts. We need small, concrete actions that prove to your nervous system that it is safe to engage again. For the men, the path back to the chase starts with what I call the micro-decision. Right now, you are likely paralyzed by the fear of making a big mistake, so you make no decisions at all. The fix is to lower the stakes. Your goal is to make one unilateral executive decision per week that affects the couple, but, and this is key, it must be small enough that the consequences of failure are near zero. For example, do not plan a surprise weekend getaway yet. Instead, on a Tuesday afternoon, send a text that says, I'm picking up pizza from that place on 4th Street for dinner. I'll be home at 6:30. Notice what you did there. You didn't ask, what do you want for dinner? You didn't ask, is pizza okay? You took the burden of thinking off her shoulders. You claimed the leadership of that one tiny moment. If she hates pizza, she will survive. But what you are doing is rebuilding the muscle of initiative. You are signaling to her, I am present and I am handling this. Most of the time, she won't care about the pizza. She will be relieved that for once, she didn't have to be the project manager of dinner. Start with 1 decision a week, then move to 2. Reclaim your competence in the smallest rooms of your life first. For the women, your shift is perhaps the hardest one, but it is the most transformative. It is called the appreciation landing strip. If you want him to chase, you have to make sure he doesn't crash land when he arrives. You have to commit to a period, let's say 2 weeks, where you prioritize his effort over the result. If he brings home the wrong brand of milk, or if he plans a date at a restaurant that isn't your favorite, you have to bite your tongue regarding the mistake and vocalize the appreciation for the act. You might say, thank you for handling the groceries, I really appreciate the help, and leave it at that. Do not add the, but next time get the blue cap. Just stop at the period. Why? Because right now, his engine is broken. He needs fuel. Appreciation is the fuel that restarts the engine. Correction is the water that floods it. Once he is back in the habit of leading and chasing, you can refine the details. But you cannot steer a car that isn't moving. You have to let him feel like a winner for trying, even if the execution was a C+. If he feels like a winner, he will try again, and he will get better. If he feels like a loser, he will quit. There is also a shared ritual that can save many evenings from turning into silent wars, the transition buffer. One of the biggest reasons men shut down is that they walk through the front door and are immediately hit with questions, logistics, and demands before they have shifted out of work mode. This triggers their defense mechanisms. Agree on a new rule. When he comes home, or when you both finish work, there is a 20-minute no-fly zone. In these 20 minutes, there is no talk of bills, schedules, or problems. He gets to go change his clothes, shower, or sit in silence. She gets to finish what she is doing. Then, after 20 minutes, you come together. This simple pause allows his cortisol levels to drop so that when he finally speaks to you, he is speaking from a place of presence, not stress. It gives him the bandwidth to actually ask, "How was your day?" and mean it, rather than just waiting for the noise to stop. Finally, you need to separate the business of life from the romance of life. In long-term relationships, every date night eventually turns into a meeting about the mortgage or the kids' school schedule. This kills the chase instantly. You cannot be lovers while you are reviewing bank statements. Create a specific time, perhaps Sunday morning over coffee, called the admin meeting. Discuss all the boring, stressful, logistical stuff then. Get it all out. Then, make a pact that on Friday night, or whenever you have your time together, those topics are banned. If one of you brings up the leaky roof, the other has permission to say, admin meeting topic. This clears the mental space for the man to be a man and the woman to be a woman, rather than two exhausted business partners trying to keep a company afloat. You need to create a sanctuary where the only job is to enjoy each other's company. We have covered a lot of heavy ground today, and I know that for some of you, this might have been an uncomfortable watch. It is never easy to look in the mirror and realize that the way we have been trying to protect ourselves is actually the very thing that is hurting our relationship. It is not easy to admit that our silence has been loud, or that our help has been controlling. But as we close this chapter, I want to leave you with one final, essential thought. None of us were handed a manual for this. We go to school for years to learn how to do algebra or how to write code, but most of us are thrown into the deep end of love with absolutely no training. We are navigating the most complex emotional terrain of our lives using only the map we inherited from our parents. A map that is often outdated, torn, or missing the most important roads. When you look across the dinner table at your partner tonight, at the husband who won't look up from his phone, or the wife who seems impossible to please, try to see them not as your enemy, but as a fellow traveler who is just as lost as you are. Most of us are just wounded children trying to love from inside adult bodies. The man who stops chasing isn't usually a cold-hearted villain. He is often just a boy who learned that it is safer to hide than to try and fail. The woman who criticizes isn't a tyrant. She is often just a girl who learned that if she doesn't control everything, she won't be safe. Understanding this doesn't excuse bad behavior, and it certainly doesn't mean you should stay in a relationship that is abusive, toxic, or fundamentally broken. If you are with someone who uses your vulnerability against you, the most courageous thing you can do is walk away. But for the vast majority of couples who are just stuck, who are just tired, and who are just missing each other in the dark, there is so much hope. The distance between you is not a sign that love is dead. It is a sign that the old way of communicating has expired. It is a sign that it is time to learn a new language. It requires courage to be the first one to drop your shield. It requires bravery to say, "I am scared of failing you," instead of "leave me alone." It requires strength to say, "I appreciate you," instead of "why didn't you do it right?" The chase doesn't have to end just because the relationship got serious. The chase changes form. It evolves from the thrill of the unknown into the deeper, quieter pursuit of truly knowing the person standing right in front of you. It is the decision to wake up every day and choose them again, even when it is hard, even when the house is messy, and even when you are tired. If you heard yourself in this story today, maybe this is your invitation. Maybe it is time to stop fighting alone, stop keeping score, and start speaking honestly, even if your voice shakes. Because the only thing more painful than the risk of speaking up is the silence of two people slowly drifting apart.